We heard someone running toward us, but the footsteps never got closer. At first, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like relief. We'd been lost for hours, long enough for the map to feel like a lie and the compass to feel like a prop. The forest had swallowed the trail sometime after dusk, folding the narrow path back into itself until every direction looked like a memory of the one before it. The trees were too dense, too similar, their trunks rising like columns into a ceiling of black leaves that erased the sky. So when we heard running, fast, deliberate, human, it cracked something open inside my chest. Hey, Aaron shouted, his voice too loud in the quiet. Over here. The footsteps didn't falter. They came from ahead of us, deeper in the trees. Quick, steady, the rhythm of someone sprinting downhill, heel, toe, crushing leaf litter, snapping twigs. Thank God, Lena whispered. I didn't answer. I was listening. There was something off about the sound. Not the direction, not the pace, the distance. It didn't change. The runner sounded close, too close to be out of sight, but not close enough to see. Close enough that I should have glimpsed movement between the trunks, a flash of color, a shape breaking the dark. But there was nothing. Just the sound. Aaron cupped his hands around his mouth. We're here. Hello. The footsteps continued, unwavering. Maybe they didn't hear us, Lena said, though her voice had thinned. They're running straight at us, I said. How would they not hear that? The sound grew louder, or maybe sharper, but it didn't approach. It stayed suspended somewhere just ahead, like a speaker hidden behind the trees. Aaron took a step forward. The footsteps adjusted instantly. Still ahead. Still the same distance. He stopped. The running continued. I felt the first small shift inside me then, like a hinge moving in the dark. Do you hear that? I asked. Yeah, Lena said. They're right there. No, I said. They're not. Aaron frowned. What are you talking about? They're like 20 meters out. Then where are they? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The forest pressed in around us. The air had cooled as the light faded, sinking into that damp, mineral cold that lives under leaves and moss. It smelled like wet bark and something older, something sealed and opened again. The footsteps kept running, unseen, unchanging. We tried to triangulate it. That was Aaron's idea. He always defaulted to logic when things went wrong, as if the world had rules he could force it to obey if he just approached it correctly. Spread out a little, he said. Not too far. If it's a person, we'll see them from a different angle. Or they'll see us, Lena muttered. Good, he said. That's the point. We moved cautiously, forming a loose arc. I stepped to the left, brushing past low branches that felt damp and cold against my sleeves. Lena drifted right, her flashlight beam jittering between trunks. Aaron stayed in the center. Okay, he said. Now, listen. We did. The running was still ahead. Still the same distance. From all three of us. That's not. Lena started. Hold on, Aaron said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Maybe it's echoing. It's not echoing, I said. There's no delay. He hesitated, then clapped his hands once. The sound died instantly, swallowed by the trees. No echo. The footsteps continued uninterrupted. Aaron swallowed. Sound can bounce weirdly in dense forest. Not like that, I said. The running didn't waver. It didn't stumble. It didn't breathe. It didn't exist in the way a person should. Hey, Lena shouted suddenly, her voice cracking. Stop. The footsteps stopped. All at once. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum being sealed. We froze. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, thick and uneven. Okay, Aaron said slowly. That means. The footsteps started again. Behind us. We turned as one. The sound was identical. Same pace. Same weight. Same distance. Directly behind us. No, Lena whispered. No, no, no. Aaron spun in a full circle. That's. Someone's messing with us. In the middle of nowhere. I said. Hunters. Campers. Someone with a speaker. The footsteps split. 2 sets now. One behind. One ahead. Running in perfect sync. I felt the forest tilt. We didn't say anything for a while after that. We walked. Or tried to. The ground sloped in ways that didn't match the map, rising and dipping with a slow, disorienting rhythm. Roots caught at our boots, and low branches snagged our jackets. The canopy thickened as we went, filtering what little moonlight there was into a dull, green-black haze. The footsteps followed. Always two sets. Always equidistant. If we sped up, they sped up. If we slowed, they matched us. If we stopped, they stopped. We tested it more than once. Each time, the silence pressed closer, heavier, as if something were leaning in to listen. "Don't stop again," Lena said after the third time. "Please." Her voice was small now, worn thin by the repetition. Aaron didn't argue. We kept moving. "Maybe it's animals," he said eventually. "Deer can run in groups. Or, deer don't sound like people," I said. "They can, in the right conditions. And they stop when we tell them to," Lena added. He didn't respond. The forest seemed to be changing. Not in any obvious way at first. No sudden shifts, no clear boundaries, but the deeper we went, the more it felt like we were walking through layers of something that didn't want to be measured. The trees grew closer together. Not physically, but perceptually. Distances stretched and collapsed in ways that made it hard to judge how far anything was. A trunk that seemed 10 steps away would take 20 to reach. A clearing would vanish when we tried to approach it, folding back into shadow. The air grew colder. Not just night cold. Deeper. Like we were descending into something buried. "Do you feel that?" Lena asked. "Yes," I said. Aaron nodded, though he didn't look at us. "Temperature drop. Probably a low area. Cold air settles. But we've been going uphill," I said. He didn't answer. The footsteps multiplied again. 3 sets now. One ahead. One behind. One somewhere to the left. All running. All the same distance. All impossible. We saw something eventually. Not the runner. Something else. We'd been walking for what felt like hours. Time had stretched into something unreliable, when Lena's light caught on a shape that didn't match the others. "Wait," she said. "There." We stopped. The footsteps stopped. Ahead, between 2 thick trunks, something pale stood out against the dark. A vertical shape. Too smooth to be bark. We moved closer, slowly, our lights converging. It was a tree. But not like the others. Its bark was stripped away, leaving the wood beneath exposed and pale, almost white in the dim light. The surface was unnaturally smooth, as if it had been sanded down. Carved into it were marks. Lines. Hundreds of them. They ran up and down the trunk in uneven clusters, some deep, some shallow, crossing over each other in ways that felt chaotic at first. Then not. There. Not random, Aaron said. "No," I said. "They formed patterns. Not symbols. Not words. Paths. Each set of lines curved and bent in ways that resembled trails, branching, looping, intersecting." "Maps. Of what?" Lena asked. I didn't answer. Because I was looking at the edges of the carvings. At the way the wood had darkened there. Not from age. From something that had soaked into it. "Don't touch it," I said. But Aaron already had. His fingers traced one of the deeper grooves, following its path upward. The footsteps started again. All 3 sets. Closer. For the first time, the distance shifted. Not by much. But enough. "There," Lena began. "Back up," I said. Aaron didn't move. He was staring at the carvings, his hand still on the wood. "These are trails," he said. "They're roots, Aaron. They overlap. Like different paths taken through the same space. Aaron, move." The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Still unseen. "But they don't go anywhere," he said, his voice tightening. "They just loop. They come back to the same place." I grabbed his arm and pulled. He resisted for a second, then stumbled back with me. The moment his hand left the tree, the footsteps snapped back to their original distance. All at once. Like a rubber band released. We stood there, breathing hard. The pale tree loomed in front of us, its carved surface catching the faint light. "Those aren't maps," Lena said quietly. "They're recordings." "Of what?" I looked at the lines. At the way they circled, intersected, returned. Of people who tried to leave. We didn't stay there. We couldn't. The forest felt tighter around that tree, the air thicker, as if something had been stirred by our presence. We moved again, faster now. The footsteps followed. 3 sets. Then 4. They didn't all start at once. One would fade in at the edge of hearing, then sharpen until it matched the others, same pace, same distance, same impossible presence. We tried to run. It was instinct. Panic. Aaron broke first, pushing forward at a full sprint, his light bouncing wildly as he crashed through undergrowth. Go! He shouted. We followed. Branches whipped at my face. Roots snagged my boots. The ground seemed to tilt and shift under me, but I kept going, driven by the sudden, overwhelming need to put distance between us and whatever this was. The footsteps surged. Not closer. Never closer. But louder. More of them. 5, 6, 7. Running in perfect, terrible harmony. I couldn't tell which direction they came from anymore. They surrounded us now, a ring of sound that moved with us, matching every stride, every stumble. Stop. Lena gasped. I can't. We slowed, then stopped. The footsteps stopped. All of them. The silence crashed down like a physical force. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. My lungs burned with the cold air, each inhale sharp and dry. Aaron turned in a slow circle. They're hurting us, he said. No, I said, but I knew. They weren't chasing. They weren't following. They were keeping pace. Maintaining distance. Like boundaries. Where? Lena asked. Where are they taking us? I looked around. The forest looked the same as it always had, dense, dark, impenetrable. But there was a feeling now. A pull, subtle, in one direction. We're not being taken anywhere, I said. We already are. We found the clearing by accident. Or maybe it found us. The trees thinned gradually, their trunks spacing out until the oppressive closeness gave way to a small, open space. The ground there was bare. No undergrowth. No fallen branches. Just packed earth, dark and slightly sunken, as if something had pressed it down over time. We stepped into it hesitantly. The moment we crossed the edge, the footsteps vanished. Not stopped. Gone. Completely. The silence that replaced them was different. Not empty. Full. Like something holding its breath. Do you hear that? Lena whispered. I did. Nothing. And in that nothing, something worse. The absence of the footsteps felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like a constant noise you only notice when it disappears. Aaron took a step further into the clearing. The ground shifted under his weight. Not much. Just enough to notice. Did you feel that? He asked. Yes, I said. He took another step. The earth dipped slightly. A shallow impression forming under his foot. Lena's light swept across the ground. And stopped. Oh God, she said. I followed her gaze. The clearing wasn't empty. It was covered in footprints. Hundreds of them. Pressed into the earth in overlapping layers, crisscrossing in chaotic patterns. All the same shape. Human. Running. Circling. Looping. None of them led out of the clearing. They all curved back in. Over and over. I felt the cold deepen, seeping into my bones. These are, Aaron began. Us, Lena said. We both looked at her. They're us, she repeated, her voice trembling. They're the footsteps. No, Aaron said. That's not. He stopped. Because we heard it again. A single set of footsteps. At the edge of the clearing. Running. Toward us. And for the first time. It got closer. We turned as one. The sound broke through the tree line, crossing into the clearing with a sudden, sharp clarity. Heel, toe, fast, direct, approaching. There's someone there, Aaron said, his voice rising with desperate hope. I stared into the darkness between the trees. Waiting. The footsteps reached the edge of the clearing. And stopped. No one emerged. Nothing moved. The sound was right there. Right at the boundary. I don't. Lena whispered. Then, another set. Behind us. Closer. Then another. And another. They were coming into the clearing now. All of them. One by one. Each set crossing the threshold where the others had vanished. The ground shifted under us. The packed earth trembled slightly as new impressions formed, fresh footprints pressing into the dirt in real time. Invisible runners. Circling. Faster. Tighter. Around us. They're not out there, I said, my voice barely audible. They're here. The footsteps encircled us completely now, a tightening spiral of sound and motion. The air grew colder with each pass, each unseen body rushing by just beyond reach. Lena screamed when something brushed her arm. Not a touch. Not quite. A displacement. Like air being pushed aside by something solid. They're going to hit us, she cried. But they didn't. They never collided. They adjusted, weaving around us with impossible precision, maintaining just enough distance to avoid contact. Like we were obstacles in a path already set. The footprints in the dirt deepened, overlapping more densely, the patterns growing more complex. More familiar. I recognized one. A curve. A loop. The shape of a path we'd taken earlier. They're recording us, I said. Aaron shook his head, eyes wide. No. No. That's not. They're making us. The realization settled like ice. The carvings on the tree. The looping paths. The endless, equidistant running. This wasn't pursuit. It was rehearsal. Or repetition. Or practice, Lena said softly, as if reading my thoughts. The footsteps surged. For a moment, just a moment, they broke their pattern. One set veered closer than the others. Too close. I felt it then. A presence. A shape. Something running beside me, just out of sight. Matching my height. My stride. My breathing. I turned my head, and saw nothing. But I felt its gaze. Not on me. Through me. Like it was looking for something. Or learning. The footsteps snapped back into formation. The spiral widened slightly. The pressure eased. We stood there, trembling, surrounded by the endless running. They don't want us, Aaron said, his voice hollow. They want this. He gestured to the ground. To the footprints. To the patterns. They want to keep it going. For what? Lena asked. No one answered. Because deep down, I think we all knew. We weren't the first. We wouldn't be the last. The forest wasn't trapping people. It was collecting them, reducing them to motion, to paths, to loops that never ended. I looked at the clearing, at the hundreds of overlapping footprints, at the way none of them led out. And I understood. We never left the trail, I said. Aaron frowned. What? We've been on it the whole time. The footsteps slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. As if listening. The trail isn't a line, I said. It's this. I gestured to the clearing. To the loops. The trail is a circle. The ground shifted beneath us again. The footprints deepened. Expanded. Our own steps began to press into the dirt more clearly now, each movement leaving a sharper, more defined mark. Don't move, Lena whispered. But it was too late. We were already part of it. I took a step back. My footprint curved slightly. Not the way I intended. I corrected. Stepped again. The curve persisted. Subtle. But there. The path was bending me. Guiding. The footsteps around us matched the change instantly, adjusting their loops to incorporate ours. They're learning our route, Aaron said. No, I said. We're learning theirs. The realization hit like a drop. Heavy. I looked up at the edge of the clearing. At the dark wall of trees. And for a moment, just a flicker, I thought I saw movement there. Not running. Standing. Watching. Figures between the trunks. Still. Silent. Their shapes indistinct, blending with the shadows. But there. Observing. The runners circled. The watchers waited. And we stepped. Again. And again. Our footprints joining the others, curving into the same endless loops. The footsteps never got closer. Because they didn't need to. We were already where they wanted us. Running. In place. Forever. A distant campfire glowed between the trees, but the flames bent sideways. I saw it first through a break in the trunks, just a smear of orange where there shouldn't have been anything at all. No trails ran this deep into the forest. No campsites, no marked clearings. The map I'd brought was more suggestion than guide, a faded topographic sheet I'd bought secondhand, its creases worn soft by someone else's hands. According to it, there were only contour lines here, tightly packed, rising into hills that swallowed sound and signal alike. But there it was. Firelight, thin and wavering, pressed strangely to one side like it was caught in a wind I couldn't feel. Do you see that? I asked. Mara stopped a few steps behind me. The forest held its breath around us. No insects, No birds, just the faint creak of branches shifting somewhere higher than we could see. Yeah, she said. Someone else out here. It's too far in. That doesn't mean anything. She adjusted the straps of her pack, though I could tell from the tension in her shoulders that she didn't believe her own answer. We'd been hiking since early afternoon, pushing deeper than we should have. The trail, if it had ever been one, had thinned into animal tracks and then into nothing at all. We'd followed the slope of a shallow ravine, thinking it might lead to water or at least an easier way through, but the ground had turned uneven, roots coiling just under the leaf litter like something alive. The light was already fading. The forest swallowed dusk faster than open land, turning it into a kind of gray suffocation. Maybe we should head toward it, Mara said after a moment. If someone's camping, they might know a way back. Or at least we won't be alone out here. I didn't answer immediately. I was still watching the fire. The flames didn't flicker upward. They leaned, all of them, as if pressed by a steady, invisible force, streaming sideways in a continuous arc. It reminded me of a photograph taken during a long exposure, light dragged into a direction it shouldn't go. Do you feel any wind? I asked. Mara shook her head. No, neither did I. The air was still, heavy, damp enough that it clung faintly to the inside of my nose when I breathed. And yet the fire, whatever it was, burned as if caught in a constant gale. We can check it out, I said finally. But if anything feels off, it already feels off. I managed a tight smile she probably couldn't see. Then we don't get closer than we have to. We angled toward the glow, picking our way between trunks that grew too close together, forcing us into a slow, careful weave. The ground dipped and rose unpredictably. Several times I felt certain we were circling, that the fire hadn't moved in relation to us at all, just stayed fixed at the same distance, a stubborn ember at the edge of sight. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, it grew larger. And stranger. The color wasn't right. Firelight should be warm, should spread in a gradient, bright at the center, fading outward into darkness. This didn't fade so much as thin out, like it was being stretched. The glow narrowed into streaks between the trees, long horizontal bands of orange and dull red that slid across bark and vanished. Do you hear that? Mara whispered. At first I didn't. Then something reached me, not as a sound exactly, but as a pressure in my ears, like the moment before a loud noise, when the air tightens. Then it came, a crackle, but wrong. Slowed down, or stretched, each pop of burning wood drawn out into a thin, dragging hiss. Beneath it, something lower, a hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground more than the air. It's just the fire, I said, though I didn't believe it. We kept moving. The closer we got, the more the forest changed. The shadows didn't fall the way they should. Instead of pooling at the bases of trees or stretching away from the light, they lay at angles, flattened and elongated sideways, like smears of ink dragged across the forest floor. When I lifted my hand, my shadow didn't mimic the movement properly. It lagged, then snapped into place, but always skewed, as if pinned to an invisible plane that wasn't aligned with the world. Mara, I said quietly. Look at this. She stepped closer. The firelight caught her face in uneven bands, slicing it into segments of brightness and dimness. That's not. She raised her own hand, turning it slowly. Her shadow stretched out to her right, thin and unnaturally long, even though the fire was ahead of us. That's not how shadows work. No. We stood there for a moment, both of us watching the ground like it might rearrange itself again if we blinked. Then Mara exhaled. We're almost there. Let's just see who it is. Maybe it's something weird with the terrain. Reflection of what? She didn't answer. We pushed forward. The trees thinned abruptly, opening into a small clearing no larger than a living room. The transition was so sudden it felt like stepping through a doorway. And in the center of it, the fire burned. It wasn't built the way a campfire should be. There was no ring of stones, no clear arrangement of logs. Wood, if that's what it was, lay piled in a loose, haphazard mound, but none of it seemed to be consumed. The flames clung to it, skimming along the surfaces rather than eating into them. And all of it, every tongue of fire, leaned hard to the left, streaming horizontally in a continuous, unwavering direction. The effect was dizzying. It looked less like a fire and more like a wound in the air, something leaking light sideways into the forest. Hello, Mara called. Her voice sounded wrong. It didn't echo. It didn't even carry properly. The word seemed to flatten, stretching slightly as it moved, then thinning out until it vanished. Like it had been pulled apart. No answer came. I stepped closer, drawn in despite myself. The heat should have hit me by then, a wall of warmth against my face and hands. But there was nothing. If anything, the air felt cooler near the fire, faintly hollow, like the absence of something that should have been there. Do you feel that? I asked. Mara shook her head slowly. I don't feel anything. I crouched, extending a hand toward the flames. Don't. She started. My fingers stopped just short of the nearest tongue of fire. It moved toward me, not upward, not outward in a flicker. It shifted, bending more sharply, stretching toward my hand like it had weight, like it was being pulled by something behind me. I jerked back. The flame snapped into place again, resuming its steady sideways flow. That's not. Mara swallowed. That's not normal. No, I said again, because there was nothing else to say. We circled the edge of the clearing, keeping our distance from the fire. The ground here was bare, stripped of leaves, but not in a natural way. The soil looked compressed, as if something had pressed down on it from above, flattening everything into a smooth, slightly concave surface. Do you see any gear? Mara asked. Tent, packs, anything. I shook my head. No footprints either. That wasn't entirely true. There were impressions in the soil, but they weren't footprints. They were long, shallow grooves, all running in the same direction as the flames, parallel lines that cut across the clearing, as if something had been dragged sideways through the earth. Maybe someone left, Mara said, though her voice had lost its earlier certainty. Without putting out the fire. She didn't answer. The hum beneath the crackling grew more noticeable the longer we stood there. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, a low vibration that seemed to resonate in my chest. When I focused on it, the rest of the forest felt distant, like it had been pushed a few degrees out of alignment with my senses. I think we should go, I said. Mara nodded immediately. Yeah, I think so too. We turned away from the fire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped. Not gradually, but all at once, like stepping into a cold room. The air tightened, the dampness sharpening into something that bit at the back of my throat. Did you? Mara began. I felt it. We both looked back. The fire hadn't changed. It still burned sideways, still cast those impossible shadows. But something about it felt closer. Not physically, its position in the clearing was the same, but the sense of distance had shifted, like it had leaned into us without moving. Let's just go, Mara said again, more urgently. We stepped into the trees. The forest swallowed us almost immediately. The clearing vanished behind the trunks, the fire's glow reduced to thin streaks again, then to nothing. We walked quickly at first, then faster, our steps uneven as we tried to navigate the undergrowth in the dim light. Do you remember which way we came? Mara asked. I hesitated. Roughly. That wasn't good enough. We pressed on anyway, angling downhill, hoping to reconnect with the ravine. The ground sloped unpredictably, forcing us to adjust our path again and again. After a few minutes, Mara slowed. Wait, she said. What? She turned, scanning the trees behind us. I think we're going in a circle. My stomach tightened. Why? She pointed. Through the trunks, faint but unmistakable, a thin band of orange light stretched between the trees. The fire. That's not possible, I said. We've been walking straight. We must have veered. No. Her voice was sharp. We didn't. We stood there, both of us breathing too fast, the forest pressing in close around us. The light flickered. No, that wasn't right. It didn't flicker. It pulsed. Each pulse was subtle, a slight intensification of the glow, but it had a rhythm to it. Slow, steady, and with each pulse, the hum returned, stronger now, vibrating through the ground beneath our feet. It's following us, Mara whispered. No, I said automatically. We're just disoriented. Look at it. I did. The band of light between the trees shifted. Not in brightness. In position. It slid slightly to the right, as if the source had moved, just a fraction, but enough that it no longer lined up with the same trunks it had a moment before. My mouth went dry. Okay, I said carefully. We're not going that way. We turned again, choosing a different direction, pushing harder now, branches snagging at our clothes. The forest seemed denser. The gaps between trees narrowed, forcing us to squeeze through. The ground rose, then dipped sharply, nearly sending me sprawling. Behind us, the light persisted. No matter how we turned, no matter how we adjusted our path, it reappeared, always just far enough away to seem separate, always visible through some narrow corridor between trunks. And always bending sideways. Stop, Mara said suddenly. I halted, heart hammering. What? Listen. I strained my ears. At first, there was only the hum. Then something else bled into it. A voice. No, not a voice. Something that resembled one. It had the shape of speech, the cadence, but none of the clarity. It was stretched, distorted, like the crackle of the fire had been molded into syllables. Stay. The word was thin, elongated, drawn out until it barely held together. Stay. It didn't come from any one direction. It seemed to seep out of the spaces between the trees, layered over the hum. That's not real, I said, but my voice sounded distant, as if I were hearing it from somewhere else. Mara grabbed my arm. We need to get out of here. We ran. There was no path, no clear direction, just the desperate instinct to put distance between us and that clearing, that fire, whatever it was. Branches whipped against my face. The ground blurred beneath my feet. Several times I stumbled, catching myself just before falling. The voice, if it was a voice, followed. Stay, stay. It stretched and warped, sometimes almost forming other words, fragments that dissolved before they could make sense. The light never left us. It slid through the forest, weaving between trees without obstruction, always just out of reach, always ahead and behind at the same time. After what felt like an eternity, I slowed, my lungs burning. I can't, I gasped. Mara stopped a few steps ahead, turning back toward me. We have to keep. She froze. I followed her gaze. The trees ahead parted. Another clearing. No, I whispered. In the center of it, the fire burned. Exactly the same haphazard pile. The same sideways flames. The same warped shadows stretching across the ground. We ran in a straight line, Mara said, her voice hollow. We didn't turn. We didn't. I know. We stood at the edge of the clearing, neither of us willing to step inside. The hum was stronger here. It pressed against my ears, a steady, suffocating vibration. The fire pulsed. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. The direction of the flames. They all bent the same way. Not randomly, not shifting with some invisible current. They leaned with intent, streaming toward a single point beyond the clearing. I followed that direction with my eyes, tracing the path the flames seemed to indicate. Deeper into the forest. What if it's not a campfire? Mara said softly. It's not. No, I mean, what if it's not meant to keep something away? I felt a cold understanding begin to take shape, something I didn't want to fully grasp. What if it's marking something? She continued. Like a boundary. The word settled heavily between us. Boundary. I looked back at the fire. At the way the flames leaned, all of them, in perfect alignment, pointing. Not outward. Inward. As if everything around us, the forest, the clearing, was on the outside of something, and the fire marked the edge. The hum deepened. The ground beneath the fire shifted. Not visibly, not in any way I could clearly see, but I felt it, a subtle pull, like gravity tilting just a fraction toward that center point the flames indicated. Stay. The voice, or whatever it was, grew clearer, less stretched, more coherent. Not a command, a warning. Mara took a step back. I think, she said slowly, I think we're not supposed to cross it. Cross what? She gestured toward the clearing. Toward the fire. Look at the ground. I did. The compressed soil formed a shallow basin around the fire, its surface unnaturally smooth. And at the very center, directly beneath the point where all the flames seemed to converge, the ground dipped. A slight depression, no more than a few inches deep, but perfectly circular. And inside it, the soil was darker, almost black, as if it had been burned, or drained. The air above it shimmered. Not with heat. With absence. Like a hole in the world that hadn't quite opened yet. Stay. I understood then. The fire wasn't a lure. It was a line. A warning drawn in light, marking the edge of something that pressed against reality from the other side. And the flames. They weren't being pushed by wind. They were being pulled. All of them, straining toward that center point, toward the place where the world thinned. Back up, I said. Mara didn't argue. We stepped away from the clearing, careful now, deliberate, as if any sudden movement might draw attention. The voice softened as we retreated. The hum eased. The fire remained, its flames still bent, still pointing inward, but it no longer felt like it was leaning toward us. We didn't turn our backs on it this time. We walked backward into the trees, keeping it in sight until the trunks finally swallowed it from view. And even then, I couldn't shake the image burned into my mind. Not of the fire itself, but of what it revealed. That somewhere deep in that forest, there was a place where the world was thin enough to be touched from the other side. And the fire wasn't there to draw us in. It was there to show everything else where not to cross.